Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Ulrich Lombard, and this is my peace interviews and presentation assignment for peace studies. And I'm very excited to share this presentation with you, and specifically what I've learned from the people's experience in South Africa regarding peace and whether we are at peace or not, and how my definition of peace was influenced for the good, specifically during this interview and presentation. And it is a pleasure for me to share this presentation with you. So let's get started. We will look in this presentation at the following. So first of all, my experience and definition of what peace is. And then secondly, what my fellow South Africans' opinions are. Now, with my fellow South Africans, I'm referring to Sherman, as well as Washington, as well as Thomas. Those are the three gentlemen I interviewed for this assignment. And then after that, I will have a reflection on what I've heard from them, as well as construct a definition of peace according to what they said peace is to them. And then after that, we will look at the various obstacles and opportunities for peace building, especially regarding what my interviewees said, what their opinions are. And then lastly, but definitely not the least, we will look at what the future of peace building in South Africa looks like. So let's get started, and let's see what my definition of peace building is. Now, my definition is largely shaped by my experience growing up in a white neighborhood as a white Afrikaans male, as well as the learning. And with learning, I'm especially referring to what I've learned at Cornerstone so far, and especially this specific module. It has shaped my learning a lot. So what I am saying is that my definition is still developing. It's not yet complete, and I'm still influenced by what peace is. So now, shortly, my definition of peace is that it's the presence of a social enhancing initiatives within a society. It's not the absence of war, but the presence of equality, justice, and individual responsibility. Also, lastly, peace to me is the active state in which the individuals of a society take full responsibility of their own peacemaking efforts. Now, what did my fellow South Africans say, or have to say, about peace building? Now, let me introduce you shortly to the three gentlemen I interviewed for this assignment. The first man was Sherman. He classified himself as an African. His age was 23 years old, and he is a team leader at Toy Kingdom in Brooklyn Mall here in Pretoria. The second man was Washington. He's also an African. His age was 30 years old, and he was a store supervisor at a candy shop also in Brooklyn Mall. And then Thomas, he was the last gentleman. He is also of an African race. His age is also 30 years old, a bit older, and he is a security guard at the housing building, or the flats nearby. So those are the three gentlemen I interviewed. And what have I heard regarding the 11 questions I had to ask? What have I heard from their experience of what peace is and what peace building looks like in the South African context? I can sum up their responses in four main areas in which I generally heard interesting comments, as well as noteworthy comments, which I would like to share with you. So the first one was regarding context, where I come from and where I live at the moment. Now, the two of the three gentlemen live in Sunnyside, or just on the outskirts of Sunnyside. It is a rather low income neighborhood here in Pretoria where crime is rampant and where the level of housing circumstances is not as high, um, especially regarding the Pretoria area. And then the last gentleman, he finds himself a resident at Mamelodi, which is a large community of, how can I say, not really urban, but informal settlement in Pretoria, where most of the domestic workers and if I can say it like that, workers in general in Pretoria come from or find themselves being part of that neighborhood. So part of low-income neighborhoods, and their context is that there is not really a peace environment for where they live. They do not feel safe necessarily in the neighborhoods from where they come. And this speaks of safety, security, and basically equal distribution of basic living arrangements and rights. What this is saying to me is that peace is not always about the absence of war, the absence of conflict, but rather the absence of equality and distribution of basic rights we expect as human beings. That was a very noteworthy reflection. Secondly, awareness. And awareness, it is more about the individual and societal awareness of what peace is and how peace is pursued. Now, what I've learned from this, especially from Sherman, is that it's first of all the individual's awareness and responsibility to be aware of where we are in terms of peace and how peaceful I am as an individual. This will inevitably, as we have learned in our studies, also spill over to the society around me and contribute to how effective I am at peace building and how effective I can see my society living in peace or not. So awareness, very a critical point, not only for an individual but as a society as well. How aware are we of peace and peace building? Thirdly, responsibility. This is to move from awareness to active participation towards building peace. Now, responsibility, and I think Washington summed this up rather well, is that yes, individuals can be peacemakers and peace builders in their own right, but it is also those in responsibility, especially those in governments, responsibility to pursue campaigns, initiatives, whatever it takes to make peace building initiatives possible and to start the movement of peace building. Yes, we as individuals can take responsibility for our own peace building 100%, but it is also those in responsibilities, how can I say, mandate and mission to also do the same. This was very noteworthy, if I can say so myself. And then passivity. I chose to include this due to that it is the greatest reality for most of our South Africans, is that we know about peace building and we truly want a peaceful society, but we find ourselves spectators thereof rather than participants. We find ourselves passive in peace building and not creators of peace. Very noteworthy, if I would say so. Then, in summary, according to the interviewees, peace is the following: the absence of violence. Also, not an outer reality, but a personal responsibility to stay authentic to one's own response to violence. There, Sherman used the word authentic there. Thirdly, it's possible in our country, but not at this time, not at the time. And then, fourthly, peace is the responsibility of those in power to actively establish peace initiatives within society. So, this definition is partly fragmented. There are some positive peace remarks, but there is a clear negative peace fragrance, if I could say so. In conclusion, peace is still not yet a reality for us as South Africans. In some way, it is a utopia. It is wishful thinking. Why? I think we do not allow ourselves to think of it as achievable as yet, but it is very aspiring to achieve someday. We still do not see ourselves part of this peace building as peacemakers in our own society. So, why? Why is this the case? We can look at possible obstacles and possible opportunities for how we can go from being passive peace observers to active peacemakers in our society. But firstly, what are the obstacles to this for where we are? Racism. Sherman very aptly underlined racism not as blatant, but as an intolerant or a lack of engaging attitude towards other races. We as races, or most races, feel misunderstood, and the lack of engagement towards this misunderstanding is what causes the underlying racism within our society. Now, as we can think, if racism, if the segregation of races, even if it's within ourselves, exists, then peacemaking, a unification of a society, will not and cannot be possible. Secondly, poverty. I think poverty speaks of itself, that the unequal distribution of basic human rights will in turn cause some individuals, and in our country a great number of individuals, to find themselves dissatisfied with their living environment as well as those who are responsible for their living environment. I think poverty is a massive part of the lack of peace within a society. Thirdly, violence, and this speaks to the lack of safety. If people do not feel safe, they do not allow themselves to reach out to their neighbors. People have to protect themselves, and in turn are not open to peacemaking initiatives or to connection with others, individuals, other races, those different from themselves in general. And in turn, that may be why violence is also a symptom thereof. Just a thought to ponder further. Thirdly or fourthly, I think it's thirdly, inequality. It is still ongoing and a very real topic in most spheres of our society. This includes business, education, housing, the distribution of resources, etc. We can go on. My point is, where there is division, no unity can be achieved. Inequality is not only a consequential division, but deliberate. And for this, an example of this can be corruption, which takes us to our next point. The governmental influence of which may be an obstacle to peace building in our society, can take the form of corruption, the political campaigns causing division amongst different races and different peoples, the political strife and division, as I've said earlier, then responsible but not accountable. In very cases, and what I've heard from especially Washington and Sherman in the interviews, is that the people in responsibility are seen as responsible but are not accountable for peace building in our society. This in turn creates a lack of trust towards those in responsibility for us as a society and us as a nation. What does this have to say as an obstacle? We cannot move forward if those in responsibility do not take up their role as peacemakers and peace creators within our society. Truly a great obstacle for us to overcome. So let's recap quickly. It is racism, violence, inequality, and the governmental influence, which may be and is at this moment clear obstacles for us to be peace builders and to build peace within our society. Yet, not all is lost. There are opportunities. There are great opportunities for us to realize that not all is lost in our peace building and peacemaking initiative in our country. What opportunities are there? The first, we can start a greater movement by greater individual involvement and contribution. The moment individuals realize that they are, as of themselves, responsible only for themselves, it's in this moment that we can reject passivity as a society and move forward to be peacemakers where we are, as we are. We cannot, and this is a great point, we cannot wait for those in responsibility to take action, but we, for where we are as individuals, are responsible already to take action for where we are. That is the only way in which change can really start, is if we are the change agents behind it. Secondly, awareness and contribution. We can grow as individuals, also as a society, in our awareness of where we are within ourselves in terms of peace, but also within my immediate society around me. We can change what we know. And the moment we know what we do know is the moment we can start to be change agents and create it to what we want it to be. I hope that made sense. So, the next question is, what is our future for peace building in South Africa? What will it take? What can get us there? What will keep us from building peace? Is it even possible to be peace builders and to have a South Africa that lives in peace with one another? And the final question, and I think this is the question that can take us from talking about it to do something about it, is what does it take? Where does it start? The future of peace building in South Africa. And the obvious, and I think the most sobering answer we can give to this, is that peace will start with me. It will start with us, it will start with you. All three. We must see ourselves as peacemakers, and as Sherman, Washington, and Thomas said, they are peacemakers for where they are in this space. And that is who we all are. We all are peacemakers. We are the peacemakers of South Africa. And we do not need an invitation to invite us into building peace, but we already have it. We are South Africans, and that makes us responsible and accountable to be the peacemakers, to be the peace builders in our society as of today. We have come to the end of our presentation. I hope it was insightful. I hope you gained a better understanding of the people's experience of peace building in South Africa, and more than that, what the possible obstacles for us can be, as well as what the opportunities are to be peace builders as individuals for where we are in this country. I hope it was insightful, and thank you for joining me today.